it's interesting that we have had an ongoing invasion. We've had millions of people come into the country in the last couple of years. We can't house them. We can't serve them. Our healthcare is collapsing. Other things are collapsing, and people can't afford rent. And we still say, no, come on in. We need temporary foreign workers and temporary students and things like that. And right now, they're saying, no, we're preparing for the number of people who are going to be coming in under a Trump administration. It's Trump's fault that we're having these problems. It's not Trump's fault. It's our bad policy. And we would need to prepare if we had a half-sane border policy in place right now. And we don't. And Chrystia Freeland is bonkers. And we'll talk about all of that kind of stuff. The other Randy is First Nations. Nope. But he's claiming First Nations benefits from the Canadian government. And so that's interesting. And he's getting called out for it and being asked to resign by other MPs. So that's interesting as well. The condo crash continues. Remember in August when people were saying these numbers are very concerning and we hope they rebound. It seems they have not rebounded, but the condo owners, like the people who are building the condos, are trying everything they can to get people into those condos, and it's not working. So we'll see what's going on. 44 months migrant backlog in Canada. That's 200,000 people waiting for the next step in their process. And while they're waiting, they can of course work and build a life in Canada. So that's super weird, right? That the borders are so porous and well, it's causing lots of problems and the tap hasn't been shut off yet. And so we'll look at all of that. Trump announces his plan to destroy the deep state. He wraps it up in 3 minutes. So that's interesting. And Toronto Medical School scraps their DEI admissions pledge. That's interesting as well. We'll look at that. Doug Ford called them out. I think you probably have to fire all those people, like all the upper echelon of that thing. If they're coming up with that idea and they need the government to intervene to fix it, I think you probably need to get a whole new leadership team in there. But maybe that's just my opinion. We actually need an entirely new leadership team across the board in this country. We need like from municipal, school board trustees, mayors, councillors, MPPs, probably new premiers, and the whole federal government needs to be jettisoned. Everybody gone. See you later. And probably like any random citizens would do better than the people who are in there now. I would dare say. Anyway, there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, we have to start at Mar-a-Lago. And we're starting at Mar-a-Lago because Donald Trump has his own robot dog with a gun on its head. Maybe not a gun on its head. It might just be a microphone or something like that. Maybe it's a camera array and a microphone. I'm not entirely sure. You probably can't have armed autonomous vehicles or armed autonomous robots personally, but if you're the president of the United States, maybe you can. I don't know. Anyway, a robot dog is patrolling Mar-a-Lago. And so the security is beefed up. Is this the upper echelon of security? I don't know. I think I'd rather have just a regular old security team supplemented by robot dogs and real dogs. Cause I saw True Lies, man. And Arnold Schwarzenegger was able to like neutralize those dogs pretty quick. Okay. Here's Mar-a-Lago's robot dog. It's just walking back and forth. It looks like a muzzle, but it could be a microphone, right? Like it looks fat. It doesn't look like a thin muzzle. It looks like a fat muzzle. And I can't imagine they've got like a 50 cal on there. So yeah. I'm guessing it's a camera array and it's made to look like a face of a dog, I think, like, or from a side profile, like it's got like a snout because the microphone is the snout. Anyway, I digress. Robot dogs with guns on their head are kind of my thing. All right, let's move into what's going on. And what's going on is just a jaw-dropping misuse of taxpayer money. And it is unbelievable. But Graham is highlighting this truth bomb from Andrew Leslie, and Andrew Leslie is a former member of Parliament and he's a retired left general of the Canadian Forces. So he says Canada last year in 2023 spent more money on consultants and professional services than it did on the Army, Navy, and Air Force, and that's madness. So here he's going to say it.
Years. Canada spent last year in 2023 more money on consultants and professional services than it did on the Army, Navy, and Air Force combined, which, quite frankly, is madness.
I think that statement stands on its own. What we're doing is bankrupting the country. We're allowing the people who are in charge to bankrupt the country through consultants, through nefarious means, through wasting our money on nothing, basically, through spending it on migrants in hotels for no reason, foreigners in hotels. Why? You got me. Why are we tolerating it? You got me. I don't know. True North is reporting this. 7 out of 10 provinces have surpassed the threshold of having more combined debt than the value of goods and services they produce. Ruh-roh. So like, if you owe more money, if say you have a job and your job pays you $5,000 a month and you're like, wonderful, or whatever, $10,000 a month, doesn't matter. And then your expenses are $15,000 a month, then you're in trouble. And that's what's happening in Canada. A bunch of the provinces, 10 of the provinces have surpassed that. And the funny thing is, like, the provinces have their own debt. They hold their own debt. And the federal government holds its debt. And the province's debt and the federal government's debt is not calculated together. Isn't that weird? Right? Like, so Canada owes Canadian federal debt. But also, Ontario residents owe Ontario debt provincially and the Canada federal debt. And then, like, all of the other provinces have their own debt too. Right? So, like, how indebted is Canada? How many taxpayers are there? There's one taxpayer, right? But at multiple levels of government, so you got to bilk it for as much as it's worth. Unbelievable stuff. 7 out of 10 provinces have surpassed the threshold of more debt than the value of goods. Like, that's a very, very concerning situation. This is the Fraser Institute, and they're actually calculating the combined debt. So according to the study, the combined federal and provincial debt for most of Canada's provinces has exceeded the value of their economies. Yeah, that's not surprising, right? British Columbia's debt was 79.2% of its GDP, Saskatchewan's 77%, and Alberta's combined debt was 63% of its economy. The rest of Canada's provinces ranged from the low end, with Ontario running a debt to GDP ratio of 100.3, and on the high end, Nova Scotia 114.3, and Manitoba with a combined debt of 141.4 of its GDP. Manitoba is broke, and they can't find teachers apparently either. So that's interesting, and it's not good. And we should stop politicians spending our money like drunken sailors. Just my opinion. Shazzy says, I just got in my car and turned on the radio. Indian radio show is desperately trying to sell pre-construction condos at Eglinton and Erin Mills. Free parking, fully furnished, zero maintenance fees for 2 years. The real estate panic is real. Developers throwing every incentive to unload units before they're stuck holding the bag. Is this the sign of the crash that we've all been waiting for? Now, my speculation on this is the condo market was already in trouble in August. Here's the August report, and I'll show you that in just a minute. I just want to make my point. And since August, it's gotten worse because the citizens have demanded a reduction in immigration. And so since the number, yesterday I saw a chart and I didn't tag it, but the number of temporary foreign workers and students has been drastically cut in the last couple of months because people are going to throw Justin Trudeau out of office. And like, that's going to happen. I don't think there's any avoiding that now. Thank goodness. But they're trying to save their skins, right? And so they're trying to do something about that. But I said before, our economy depends on all of these people coming in. Without all of these people coming in to buy up all these construction sites, all these new condos and all these things that they're churning out, then the economy goes, right? That's the technical term for it. And so on one side of things, people don't want the country fundamentally changed from what it was, too late. But on the other side of things, people also don't want a crash. So you might not be able to have both, right? Like, and that's difficult. So, but I don't know if there's a way out of this. Possibly, probably. Economics are interesting and people are endlessly creative. So probably, but at this point in time, what we have been doing isn't going to work. And the solution that you would usually rely on, I don't think it's going to play out well, right? Because these condos aren't going to sell, and there's not an influx of a whole bunch of new people coming in like 5 months who are going to buy them, right? Like, presumably the reduction in immigration is going to last a little bit. And so because of that, these things are going to sit, and because of that, it's going to have an impact. And this person says it could bring the whole thing down. I don't know, but Table Salt says this is from August 20th of this year. It's only gotten worse. Toronto condo market is in serious trouble. Sales are down 72%. No one is cash flowing, and rents are also falling. This could bring down the whole system, Table Salt says. So here's just a part of this report.
A buyer's market, but buyers aren't buying. According to the latest data from the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board, condo sales are down, and the number of condos on the market is up big time. In July, there were more than 6,000 units for sale. For purpose-built and condo apartments fell to a 22-month low in June to $2,715 a month for a one-bedroom, the fifth straight month we've seen declines.
That's super high. A one-bedroom for $3,000? That's insane. That's insanity. That's when I was growing up, when I was having an apartment in Guelph downtown, I could walk downtown Guelph up over the hill and through the parking lot of the Church of Our Lady on Cork Street. So that apartment cost me $600 a month. It was a 1-bedroom. It was a crappy apartment, but one of them was nice, I guess. Nice. Not one of them was like, okay. But I wouldn't spend $2,700 on it, right? It was a 1-bedroom apartment and it had like 2 glass doors going into the bedroom. And I was like, this looks like a girl's apartment, but it's going to be my apartment. Anyway, it was nice enough, but like $600, right? And I mean, one of them was $550. And so like, when I look at that and think to myself, and I never lived in a building or anything like that. And that building living, in my opinion, was too expensive because it was $800 plus utilities, but not TV. I think TV came included or something to that effect. Anyway, there was all these deals with buildings, but I didn't want to be in the elevator. I didn't want to do the elevator. I wanted to just carry my groceries from like directly. And my building where I lived was like a converted house. Okay. So different, a little bit different. Building living in when I was younger was like $800, but that's vastly different from $2,700. That's way too expensive. That's unbelievable. And like, no wonder prices are falling. Right. And so, I don't know what's going to happen. It seems like, one of the other things is the economic pain is there are port strikes that are happening, I guess, and Christmas is coming, and that's not good because it's a big holiday season. Businesses want to have their products in stores. If the products aren't in stores until after Christmas, then they don't get all those Christmas sales, and that's bad, right? And that's bad for the economy because the businesses can't give bonuses because they haven't sold all their products, and like there's a knock paying run-on effect that is happening. And a lot of people were saying that this is going to happen. This is going to start to tank Trump's presidency and take everything else down with it, and bring in that central bank digital currency reset. And I don't know about all of that, but these kind of stressors on the economy really, really lend themselves to, could be a red flag for problems down the road. So pay attention, right? Here's conservative. Let's talk about the BC election. Oh my gosh, right? We've got US news at the end of the show, and it's good. It's fun, robust US news, but we'll stick with Canadian news as we're a Canadian news show. Anyway, election news, and I'm so disappointed with the BC Conservatives. Like everybody's saying, oh, they're globalists. We knew they were globalists and it's fine and whatever, but I'm still really disappointed with the BC Conservatives. The BC Conservatives are fighting this kind of sort of, and like weekly, they're already kind of assuming their position as a weak opposition party who says we shouldn't do this, but we're going to go along with it. Kind of, we're not going to be upset when the majority pushes it through. Like they say, we call for a truly independent review of the mistakes made by Elections BC. An all-party committee is not an effective way of addressing this issue. Politics will get in the way. Why not have an independent investigation? Why be against such an idea? Now, like, that's a weak position to argue from, right? Like, what are you doing? This is an insane way to approach this situation. You should stand there and say, absolutely nothing is acceptable other than a brand new election. I reject the results of this rigged election, and all of the people who rigged it should be in jail, and we should have a paper ballot, single day, blah, blah, blah. You should set your bar high. The art of the deal, and indeed, like all negotiation, is ask for way more than you want and settle at what you want, right? Like, say brand new election, and then if they say no, and like if they say no, you fight them for it. But if you can settle with an independent inquiry, then settle with an independent inquiry. But if they're not going to give you even an independent inquiry, don't say, why be against such an idea, guys? Oh, I'm so sad. Shut up. Get out of here. Like, are you kidding me? You deserve to get smacked around. Like, what? Have a strong position. Stand up for yourself, for crying out loud. The remanded says, again, my timeline, so you can look at his timeline, since the election night has been covering this every day, every morning, every afternoon, every evening. 19 days later, which started with a 3-hour thread written on the side of the number one highway, and what seems to be a wasting of my time. At this point, I'm just getting the public to be aware. I'm still auditing them, the BC election people. Did you know that they found another 494 votes in their lack of detail update on the November 5th? Which post do I give you? And he lists a whole bunch of his ones. Or you could just return my call, and maybe one candidate, one party of BC could actually take the situation seriously. The public is waiting, and I'm here to take your call. So like he's saying, I've audited these people and they're not telling the truth. And they're not, right? And there are a whole bunch of people who are saying the same. Here's ShareAware Canada. Yes, we've been watching since the election night. Screenshots, boxes, reporting, not reporting, XLS sheets. I can see the variables are immense. Right now I'm looking at JDFM awaiting their physical receipts and discussion at a meeting last night. 2 tabulators had a malfunction at the same location. The remaining ballots were boxed and seemed not to show up in the initial count. How many machines were installed for each riding? How many tabulators had a malfunction? Large transcription errors have been identified. Wonder how many have been overlooked. How many boxes in total were there? It seems that the JDFM is out plus 98 votes, and the boxes that were not added to the balance sheet, I have no idea. This is a small example of what could be a larger problem. I hope that you will consider all of the discrepancies thoroughly. There were boxes delayed in every riding on the evening of October 19th, 22 of 23 reporting, and I've already showed you that the broadcast said 23 of 24. So it could never be counted. Then mid-live, there was change to 24. I showed you that. Reporting seemingly on all stations. This did not match the BC election page. Why? So many questions that will likely not have answers without a formal audit, independent of the stakeholders. This election should not stand. And the BC Conservatives, if they had any fight in them at all, would not accept it. Would say absolutely not. And then have a strategy. Because what's happened is politics got played by people who thought they were running an election. Trump knew what he was doing and knew what he was getting into, and he played them, I think. And now they're reaping what they sowed, and he's coming in, and I think he's going to do what he says, and we're going to get to the end there. But in Canada, we have a misunderstanding about what it is when you say, I'm going to run for office, because now you're in a war, you're in a battle. And if you're not a good general, if you can't marshal your troops and anticipate the counters against you and have effective countermeasures for yourself from your side, you're not gonna do it. And Rustad, it seems like right now is the test of his leadership, and he is sitting in his tent and hoping that somebody else figures it out for him. And I don't get it. I mean, I get it, but dude, now's the time, meet the moment or whatever. But he's hiding, and I don't get it. So hide away, I guess, Rustad, but you're not doing what you said you were going to do. Eric Duncan says, breaking news, PMO admits at least 2 secret meetings with the NDP HQ to secure a deal to change the election date. This is federal now, to guarantee dozens of NDP and Liberal MP pensions, an unacceptable scheme to pad their pocketbooks before Canadians defeat them. Enough of their insider deals. Call the election now. So Eric is, I think he's an MP, proud to be a Conservative member of Parliament. For Stormont, Dundas, South Glengarry. And so he is highlighting what the NDP are doing and the Liberals are doing. It bothers me that they're coordinating and planning to change the laws to take all of this money from Canadians improperly. It bothers me that they're doing these secret meetings separately than what the agreements are at the secret meetings. The secret meetings are bothersome, and the agreements they're coming to are bothersome. And so I don't know how you effectively fight that properly, but and I don't know how secret meetings are okay with the caucus of the Liberals and the caucus of the NDP, but I guess they're getting paid off with these pensions, right? So it seems like it's all just, everybody's got a price, and a lot of people's price is a pension, right? Here, do you want a pension? Yeah, okay, here you go. Pay you off, and now after you're gone, we're going to turn the country communist, right? So jeepers creepers. Dan Alba says there's only one person who is keeping Justin Trudeau in power, and that person is the NDP's leader, Jagmeet Singh. So here is a minute in the House of Commons talking about that.
Mr. Speaker, my constituents have told me in no uncertain terms that they want a carbon tax election. There is only one person left who prevents that by keeping this Prime Minister in power, and that person is the leader of the NDP. The same leader of the NDP who made a big stunt when he told Canadians he had ripped up his coalition deal with the Liberals. It was a perfectly timed scam on voters in Elmwood, Transcona, right before a by-election. The leader of the NDP even went so far to say, and I quote, "The fact is the Liberals are too weak, too selfish, and too beholden to corporate interests to fight for people," end quote. But if the Liberals are so weak, why has the leader of the NDP voted for the carbon tax over 24 times? Why does he support his inflationary deficits, including wasteful spending like the Prime Minister's Arrive scam app? Why does the leader of the NDP support the Liberals' soft-on-crime policies that have led to a 50% increase in violent crime? Every day this Prime Minister remains in power is because of the leader of the NDP. It's time for the leader of the NDP to stand with Canadians. Instead of this Liberal government, call a carbon tax election.
There you go. So there's all sorts of reasons for an election. Corruption election, all sorts. And here is Elon Musk responding to Robert. Robert says, hey, Elon, we need your help in Canada getting rid of Justin Trudeau. Elon Musk says he'll be gone in the upcoming election. Sure, I guess. Everybody's excited about this. Cat Canada says Elon says Trudeau will be gone. If we don't get rid of the communists, if we don't get rid of the UN 2030 agenda, if we don't honestly get rid of the climate change scam that's stealing our money, if we don't stop taxing inputs, and that's not just getting rid of the carbon tax, but punishing taxes on oil and gas and making our inputs more expensive, from food to energy, right? If your gas is $1.50 a liter, that makes your profits harder to maintain if you're running like a farm or if you're running a trucking company or something to that effect. So yeah, or if you have to move any of your products, right? Like it's expensive, and it cuts out your ability to be competitive on the world stage that doesn't hinder its own citizens like this. That's why they were trying to get everybody to do it, so everybody's on the same playing field. Bullshit, right? Like, but fundamentally, I don't think that getting rid of Trudeau is going to be a solve-all, because it seems like the Conservative Party, even the milk cartel that the dairy or that the Conservatives are for, seems to be an artificial. It's not, and I don't even think it's a benefit, but an artificial twist on the economy, unnecessary, and like that should be scrapped too. Like if you're really conservative and you really want the best for your citizens, I think that's the best direction to go in. And like we're not going in that direction. We're scrapping the carbon tax. Is it? You know, like it's, I don't know. Here's Justin Trudeau's ego highlighting Melanie Joly. She seems very unserious. And Trudeau's ego says, yesterday, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister Joly was asked if she should stop using mega political attacks after Trump's win. And she started talking about the price of butter. And I mean, the price of butter is very expensive. And at least she understands the price of butter is very expensive. So that's good. She's demonstrating she's not completely out of touch, I guess. But she doesn't answer the question vis-a-vis, like, should you stop these political attacks using Donald Trump's name in our politics here? Because it seems kind of gauche, considering he's the president-elect. And she doesn't really talk about that. She says, "Oh, I'll let the government talk about that." Here we go.
Often in question period and in your online materials that come from the Liberal Party, you compare Per Poilievre and his Conservatives to Donald Trump, to the MAGA movement. Do you have to knock that off now that Donald Trump is going to be in the White House and MAGA may control every level of the U.S. government? You're relying on relationships. Can you keep using that as a weapon politically against the opposition?
Well, so I think that the Canadians know the Liberal Party and our values. But I think that what we need to reckon is something that I'm seeing across the world, David, and I'm being very frank with our viewers right now. I know that people are angry. I know there's frustration. We're all frustrated when we go and buy our groceries. And, I was looking at just buying a pound of butter over the weekend. It's nearly $9 in Montreal. So I can understand that. There's a reason why people want us to make sure that we have their back. And we need to give people power back. We need to make sure that we give them ways that they can make sure that they can have ends meet. And so we're doing so through the dental care program. We're doing so through the pharmacare program. We're doing so through the child care program. We have a very different way of supporting Canadians than the state of America has with supporting the U.S.
But the MAGA comparisons, Minister, using Trump as a weapon against Mr. Poilievre, doesn't that need to stop now, given what's happened here in the United States?
I'll let my party take decisions on that. I'll deal with the relationship with the U.S. But what I can tell you, though...
Weak. She pivoted right away. Like, absolutely right away. She said, Canadians know my party's, how we feel about it, basically. And it's like, this is not, that's how Kamala lost. I mean, Kamala was an idiot and she couldn't actually speak to anybody about anything of substance. And she cackled all the time. But fundamentally, she didn't address anything. And she talked about abortion and other nonsense things as if they were really important. And they weren't really important. Nobody cared about them. People cared about the invasion. People cared about not being able to afford rent. People cared about not being able to afford food. And Trump spoke to those things, right? And like the liberals aren't speaking to those things now. They're just talking about their nonsense, fabricated reality of bullshit. Ryan Garrettson says, I can't for the life of me understand how this woman is in any way qualified to be the Minister of Foreign Affairs. And why is she smirking through this question, call an election? This is a question talking about our NATO commitments and asking about, are we going to meet Trump's demands of funding NATO at 2%, which is the NATO commitment. And she isn't able to answer the question. So here we go.
Also understand that defense spending has increased, at least the allocation of money towards defense spending in general, has been lacking in some years. But I can tell you clearly from speaking to the person whom is still a very close confidant of Donald Trump, that she says it's not enough. What you have just laid out is not enough for Donald Trump. So once again, I'll ask you, are you willing to go beyond the plan that you have set out so far, beyond the target that you set out in July, for which we actually don't have many details about how you're going to reach it? Are you willing to reach that 2% target sooner than 2032? Yes or no, Minister?
Well, the goal is definitely to increase our defense spending and to adapt to what's going on geopolitically. And as the foreign minister, I must say that I'm very concerned about what's going on in the world right now. And I definitely think that we need...
The question was, will you meet 2% NATO spending as requested by Donald Trump? What you've said is not enough. Will you meet 2%? Yes or no? And she says, we want to increase defense spending.
To do more when it comes to defense spending. And sometimes it's been rare in the past in Canada that the foreign minister and the defense minister would agree on this, but I completely agree on this. And I have a quite hawkish point of view on this because...
There's her cackling Kamala impersonation.
I really, really think that when at the time the way North America was thought to be defended was through NORAD, well, we now need to update our approach. We need to deal with adversaries such as Russia, because Russia is a neighbor, and also the fact that Russia is allowing China way more in the Arctic. And
pivot, right? It has nothing to do with the question. So is she going to increase defense spending? I'm going to talk a whole lot about a whole bunch of other things and hope that you've forgotten the question. That is actually the strategy. Here is Ryan Garrettson again, and talking about the new premier of New Brunswick and the Liberals' obsession with abortion. And I wish I didn't have to talk about this as much as I talk about this. We had a conversation in the Canada Poly chat, and thanks, Gwen, for talking about this. And I was saying the other week that I didn't think that there were many situations where the life of the mother was at risk. And Gwen said that there are. And fair enough, there was the conversation going back and forth. And I feel like I should clarify my position because it matters, right? Because it does matter. And so here's Michael Forrest, and he says, here's the Florida abortion stats. And so when I'm talking about killing babies with abortion, generally I'm not speaking of the lines that I'm speaking of in this chart are the elective abortions, which total 66,497 in Florida. And I'm not talking about the abortions due to a life-endangering physical condition, which number 47. Okay, I'm not talking about those 47. I'm talking about the elective ones. Okay, I'm not talking about, well, I mean, there's almost 5,000 abortions that are being done in Florida due to social or economic reasons. We could probably fix that situation, right? There's 502 that are serious fetal genetic defect, deformity, or abnormality. I'm not talking about those ones. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that we shouldn't work with people to get the best possible outcome for them. But killing the baby is not always necessary. And it seems like there are late-term abortion situations where they pull a viable baby and then they have to kill it. And my question is, why do you have to kill it? What's the function here? It's a viable baby. If you take care of it, it'll survive. Maybe get it to parents who are wanting it, right? Due to rape, 61. That's muddy. You'd have to have a conversation about that, right? Physical health of the mother that is not life endangering, 207. She has a cold? I would say we could probably figure something else out here. Due to incest, that's 1. That's muddy, right? That's in there with the rape one. Emotional, psychological health of the mother, 211 of those in Florida. And so, I mean, could we do something else there too? I'm just saying, I think that there are other options, and it seems like the other options are not explored in our modern world. And when you've got 66,000 abortions that are elective and less than 10,000 that are less than 8,000 really that are maybe not, well, actually, like the 5,000 there that are for social or economic reasons, that's probably, we could do something else there. So really less than 1,000 for health reasons. We could make a lot of difference by viewing it in a different way. So I'm not trying to be a monster here. I'm not trying to say, I'm not trying to kill babies and women. I'm trying to get the best outcome for everybody. That's, I think, the point. And I'm not getting that. It seems like that's the rhetoric coming out of these guys as well. But that rhetoric ends up at 66,000 elective abortions. And I think we could do better. And I think we should demand that we do better. Why can't we do better? Is that a weak position to argue from?
Hi, everyone. Today, we approved regulatory changes to AB 420 that will now allow Medicare to cover the cost of surgical abortions provided outside hospitals. Abortion is health care, and everyone deserves access to the care they need when they need it. This puts us one step closer to improved abortion access in the province. While this won't immediately provide additional access, our next steps will be to work with stakeholders like the New Brunswick Medical Society and the regional health authorities to establish how these services will be delivered in community.
There are people who don't have like medical doctors, right? Somebody was saying, I'm glad that the medical doctor shortage isn't affecting abortionists, right? Like there's all sorts of weird situations here. So I hope my position is more clear. But I'd be glad to engage in a conversation with you. I'm okay to be wrong with things too. Like I'm okay to be wrong, but I think we can do better. I think society should demand that we do better. And like, I think we could do better. Here's Todd. And this is our grab bag of governance, by the way, everyone's favorite section. Todd is an MP. He says, breaking former RCMP superintendent calls Trudeau's drug legalization experiment one of the worst public policy disasters in BC history. And yeah, what's happened to Canada with the drug overdoses and the tent cities and all the rest is absolutely shocking. And I did not think, I wouldn't have believed that our leadership, our municipal leadership, our school leadership, our provincial leadership, and even our federal government, 2010, I wouldn't have believed that tent cities would have been allowed in Canada. I feel like, people would have pulled together to figure out a real solution, and like by stopping bad policies, ending failed, initiatives, things like that, collecting money together, deporting people probably wouldn't be on my list, but not that I wouldn't have thought of it, but it's like one of those things where the tent cities in my mind in 2010 would be economic and not full of migrants, right? And well, maybe it is. Maybe that's all it is now too. Except the migrants get hotels paid for by the government, right? So that's weird. But what's happened is absolutely, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. It's so terrible. It's so terrible. It is orders of magnitude worse than worst case scenario that I could even imagine in 2010. Does that make sense? So like Hoovervilles on friggin' steroids. Hoovervilles full of drug addicts that are using government paid for drugs. And the government is looking at giving them tiny homes. Like orders of magnitude worse, okay? Here's the retired he had a position. He's a retired former RCMP superintendent, and he's talking about this.
You're right. Earlier this year, you called BC's drug decriminalization experiment one of the biggest public policy disasters in our province's history. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yes. Basically, my experience with that was it led to a marked increase in incidents of public disorder within the community that I was policing at the time, and had significant negative effects in that regard, resulting in a lot of complaints from the community, both community residents and business owners, and made things very difficult for police to intervene in those behaviors of open drug use and disorder.
Hello everyone, thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to canadapoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful